Welcome back to another episode of Broke Up, Not Broken. I'm your host, Jamie Lima, and founder of Allegiant Divorce Solutions, where we help people prepare for, navigate, and recover financially from divorce. This podcast is your one-stop shop for mastering your life and your finances throughout the entire divorce process. In today's episode, we're joined by Jeff Kolez, founder of Divorce Daddy and a dedicated advocate for turning personal trials into transformative victories. Jeff's journey through a high-conflict divorce led him to create resources that support others facing similar challenges. In today's episode, we're going to explore how his experiences and insights can empower those navigating the tumultuous waters of divorce. So buckle up. Let's once again get you personally and financially empowered. Jeff, so great to have you here, man.
Thanks for having me, Jamie. That's a great intro.
Hey, I appreciate that. I worked hard on that. Kidding, but you have a great background, a ton of experience, man. I love the work that you're doing. Supporting men that are going through divorce, being two dudes that went through some pretty tragic and expensive and emotionally draining divorces ourselves. I think you're doing some amazing work. So maybe share a little bit about your experience and what really prompted you to launch the website.
It was I'm. Every time I'm asked that question, I always have to take a second back. It just felt like insanity. Like it didn't feel like real life going through that divorce. I have a friend who says, if you have a son, you should take him to family court when he turns 16, the day he turns 16, and have him sit there all day just to really underline the importance of choosing your spouse, if you even choose your spouse. And I don't want to come from a place of bitterness, because I'm not bitter and I'm not angry, but it was a hell of an experience. It was like financially, it was like somebody took all of my chips and put it on somebody else's space. And I had no say in that. I was slandered. I lost friends. It was a miserable experience. And it lasted the better part of a decade, I would say. And it took, I think the worst part was learning how to deal with it emotionally. There was this phase I went through where I was angry. I was very, very, very angry. I would say I even was angry towards the entire gender of women just because of the experience I went through. And that was a period that lasted, a while. And then I went through, and then the court chews you up, spits you out, and you're kind of just sitting there bewildered, like, what just happened to me? And then you start to rebuild, and you almost like hold on to things tighter because you're afraid of losing them. But that doesn't work either. And eventually I learned to, and emotionally, I'll talk about that for a second. It felt like I just wanted to armor myself off and protect my heart and myself from ever getting hurt that badly again. But that doesn't work well when you're rebuilding a life and when you have kids and when you have a new partner, and you don't want to numb yourself, but at the same time, you've got to protect yourself. And so where I try to guide men is towards a place where they learn. I think my problem is I didn't know why I ended up in that place and how I ended up in that place. So I try to guide men to understand why they went through that to begin with and how not to let it happen again.
There's a lot to unpack there. There's a lot going on. I mean, a lot of things I can empathize and sympathize with, man. I mean, it's you're kind of in my situation. I had asked for the divorce, so I was like, hey, this is not happening. And then, it just kind of snowballed out of control from that moment forward. And, my divorce took, greater than a year to be finalized, and leveraging the courts as much as humanly possible. The other side was doing that. And it's like, you're very right. I mean, every state here in the United States is very different. Some states are a little more lenient. Some states are easier to deal with because we work in all 50 states, and I'm here in California, and it's kind of middle of the road. It's really dependent on like who you're going to get as far as the judge goes, whether they're going to allow things to continue to happen, or they're going to put a stop to them and try to get you through this without having to be just dragged through the mud. But for the most part, I think you're absolutely right, man. These courts are just And maybe just because they're so antiquated and they can't get out of their own way and they're all backed up, and it's just like you're just a number on a docket somewhere, and you can really be, like you said, chewed up and spit out by these courts.
It didn't seem like I don't want to get too into the court stuff. I don't know much about the legal side of it. But from my point of view, it didn't seem like anybody was interested in digging in and looking at what was going on under the surface. Now, I don't know if that's a matter of not having enough time, or more just you guys go figure it out, or what that was. But all of the points I tried to bring up, they were kind of brushed aside. And my ex at one point took my kids away until I signed an agreement saying that I would pay her more money. And that was never taken seriously. Like to me, that seems like egregious, and that nobody cared to look at that was shocking.
That is pretty shocking, but you made it through, right? And now, and now you're on the other side of this, and kudos to you, man, for just being there and just reflecting on all this and trying to be a much better person on the other side, which is what this show is all about. What we try to help people do, in the work that we do, and at least on the financial side, we try to help people not only while they're going through the divorce, right, but also on the tail end when the dust is settled, and try to help them rebuild their lives. So maybe let's talk a little bit about that for a moment, if we can. The divorce is finalized. It's now behind you, and it's like day one of your newfound single life, so to speak. Like, walk us through that. Like, what were some of the practical things that you did that were able to get because it sounds like you kind of got hosed on the financial side like I did. So what were some of the things that you did to, I guess, pick yourself up and brush yourself off and start thinking about moving forward?
I don't know that the divorce, I think, took 6-7 years. So there wasn't like this grand moment of, it's here's your new single life. It was like this long, painful letting go. Even after probably 2 years, it was pretty contentious. And I think the defining moment for me was just looking at my kids and being like, is this the life? Is this the childhood I want them to lead? Like, is this what I want them to remember? Me being angry and always fighting something. So yeah, we didn't have a lot to even fight about. So I didn't quite understand. I understand now, but I didn't quite understand what the fight was about. But at first I got an apartment, and we owned a house, but I had to get an apartment and start over again. And I remember going to IKEA and having to pick up like the basics, like the very crappy bed and somewhere for my kids to sleep and a couch. And I spent about a year in that apartment. And then I remember feeling really depressed and really heavy. So I went traveling for about 6 months, did something for myself. It had been probably 2-3 years of hell by that point. And I needed something to look forward to. So I know that sounds irresponsible from a certain point of view, but I needed something for myself. I had to put myself first. And one of the things I talk about is put your own oxygen mask on first. You can't be a good father if you are in a place of hell. So I went to Australia for a little bit, and that was about as far away from my ex as I could get without starting to come back. But I did something for myself. I went diving. I love that. I went to some island that didn't have electricity and spent a week there and just had little adventures that gave me something to live for again. So I came back and I decided to build a life. So I made a vow that this was not going to be the thing that beat me. I still had some life to give, or I still had some life to live, and there was still some fight in me. So I was in tech, so I was making a decent salary. I ended up working at one point 3 jobs just to pay for a house, pay for lawyers' fees, and the support I owed and all the other bills and rebuilding and basically buying a new life. And it was like this moment it was these little moments of focus on what I had control over and just do that. Ended up buying a house after a few years, eventually got the kids half the time, and we just built a life moment by moment. It was no like grand turning point. It was just built moment by moment.
6 years of a divorce, man. That is one of the longer ones. And I've been doing this work for a while now, and we have a couple cases that are dragging on. But I think 6, almost 7 years is probably the longest that I've heard.
2 rounds in court.
What's that?
2 rounds in court.
Yeah.
Like we went to court once and then went to court again.
It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. So thank you for sharing that story. It's pretty incredible and pretty powerful, because when you're in the throes of the divorce and you're going through it, and there's this, the tornado of things is just circling around you, right? Like you've got the kids, you've got your job, you're trying to be a good person and try to be a good employee, and you're doing all these things. And like, I'm with you, man. Like it is challenging to try to keep all those plates spinning, so to speak, and be good at all of them. And I think that's one of the big challenges that most people have as they're going through this process. So you work with a lot of men that are doing this, and a lot of them try to put a brave face on, just like you did, and just like I did myself, and get through it. And I don't know if that's necessarily the right thing to do. So I think reaching out for help and asking for help is incredibly powerful. So what do you like when somebody comes to you and they're going through a divorce? Like, what are some of the first things that you're sharing with them, and maybe some practical tips that they can take and steps they can take to try to soften this blow here a little bit?
This is going to sound really basic, but when things get complex, I try to look at what little things I'm not doing. We got my new partner. I met her shortly after I split up, and we got a house together, and she wanted a dog. She hadn't had a dog in a long time. So we got a little puppy. And just that act of getting out of bed, of having something that got you out of bed every morning. Because, I had the kids half the time, but on those weeks where I didn't have the kids, the house was really quiet, and it was really easy just to lay in bed all day. But having this little puppy force you out of bed, even if you just let her into the backyard. But the act of going for a walk every morning probably saved my life. So that's the first thing I recommend, is get time in nature and some sort of movement. And time in nature just helps ground you. You can't be in a bad mood after spending some time in fresh air, get some sunlight. It's basic things. So time outdoors, movement, and that movement can be as simple as a walk. I went to the gym a lot. Now I'm going boxing, which is absolutely wonderful. But that leads into the third thing, is some sort of presence practice. If you're always worried about what's going to happen, or if you're always ruminating on what happened, that's a toxic, horrible place to be. And the way out of that is to get into the present moment, even if it's for like 2 minutes. So like I said, boxing, you can't be worried about what's going to happen next week if somebody's trying to punch you in the head.
So get a puppy and martial arts or boxing or something along those lines. Activity. Get a puppy. Certified,
guaranteed to fix everything.
That's all.
Yeah, those little things, I kind of discovered them by accident, but those are the practical tips I recommend to everybody.
What about on the financial side? What are some of the financial, because dudes like us are going through this, and we're having we're working and, working multiple jobs like you were, to try to, propel yourself forward, but you're effectively supporting 2 households effectively with the money that you're earning. Any practical tips on the financial side that you can share?
I white knuckled that part of it. I overpowered it. I was like, I left my relationship with a pile of debt, and then I had debt pile on because of the divorce. So I consolidated my debt, and then, so it was just one target, and I would hammer at that target. And I had a whiteboard on the wall behind me, And I wrote down, I don't remember how much the total debt was. Let's just say, for sake of argument, it was $50,000. And then every time I got paid from those 3 jobs, it was like, cross that off and write 59,500, whatever the number was. Mm-hmm. And then I would have meetings like this, like Zoom meetings, and I could see in the background, like, that number. But I would just hammer at that number. And it was always in the back of my head, like, I need $50,000, whatever the number was. And then magically it got paid off.
Yeah. Well, it's like that, one of the few smart things that Dave Ramsey has shared over the years is the debt snowball, right? And you just got to keep hammering at it and just, $50, $100 at a time. And then that $100 turns into $200 and then $400. And the next thing you know, the debt's gone. And I can really appreciate that, man. I mean, we do that with our financial planning clients. We have a lot of clients that come into us on the financial planning side of things, traditional financial planning engagements that we have. And a lot of people are like, hey, nobody's ever taught you how to budget. Nobody's ever taught me how to save money or invest money and do all these things. So I can appreciate where you're coming with that. I think it's certainly a great momentum builder. And I think that's what it's all about, right? Is getting momentum to just get up and do the next thing, right?
It's the easiest thing to give up and end up on your couch all day. I mean, I did it many times. There were entire months I lost just sitting on the couch. But yeah, figure out what that thing is that you want. And it doesn't have to be something physical. I wanted to buy a new house. Like after 5 years, I wanted to buy a bigger house for me and the kids. And just you had to get out of debt in order to buy the next size of house. So it was like this thing I fixated on and then just hammered at it. So the first step, I think, is getting really clear on what you want to do and why. And then that makes the what easier.
Is that where Divorce Daddy came from?
Yeah, exactly. I was in tech for about 25 years and I just had this moment of, I can't do this anymore. It's not in line with my purpose. I have no why behind it. Sure, the money is great, but I can't. And I understand that, I mean, this is speaking purely selfishly. Part of the healing journey is helping other people. And I know that a lot of men are struggling with this issue. So leaving tech, I was like, well, what am I going to do next? And it's like, it just felt very natural to help others through this process.
It's cathartic, right? I mean, that's a main reason why I do the work that I do. I'm a product of a divorce. My parents were divorced when I was really little, and I watched both of them struggle through that process, and not only on the emotional side of things, but also on the financial, and which is kind of what propelled me into the world of finance to begin with, and become a financial planner. When I was 25 or 26, whatever it was, when I first got my first gig doing that, and then now here we are. Trying to help people through the financial aspects of divorce and make sure they don't have to lose their shirt through the whole process. I think there's something very cathartic and you're absolutely, the word healing is a perfect word to use because it really is like when you're selflessly supporting other people through that are going down the same similar path that you've been down. There's some power in that, I think. And it's noble work. So what does, working with you at Divorce Daddy look like? What are some of the things that you're helping people through and talking about and resources you're sharing with dudes?
It's number one, figuring out who you are again. Mm-hmm. When you go through divorce, it's like your identity gets stripped away from you almost. You're no longer like that 24/7 dad. Like you might be a weekend dad. You might be every other Thursday dad. So who is that? And you might have followed the instructions on the box, but you ended up with something that fell apart. So how do you trust those instructions again? And do you even want to follow those instructions?
It's like IKEA furniture.
Exactly.
Who the hell knows? Nobody knows how to put it together because the pictures are terrible and the stuff falls apart in 6 months. It's like IKEA furniture. I'm only kidding.
That's a good analogy. So it's figuring out who you are. And I imagine as you go through, well, for most men, I imagine that you change as you go through that battle. You aren't who you were 6 months ago or a year ago or 5 years ago. So who are you and why are you rebuilding? So answering those sort of questions. And once you do that, you start rebuilding. And what's going to happen is emotions are going to come up. And that's a lot of this work, is getting rid of those emotions, or balancing those emotions so that you're not acting from that place. I'll tell a quick story. So my ex had an affair. And so every time I saw her on her phone, it was like I would get angry because I knew she was texting somebody. Then I got a new partner and she was on her phone. And then subconsciously, I connected those two things. So I started to get angry at my new partner. She was not doing anything. She wasn't doing anything. But I had that subconscious connection between those two things. So it's it's finding those little patterns and letting go of them, because you're living a new life. You're responding to the same stimulus, but it's a different scenario.
Yeah. I I could see how you would be like, as soon as your new partner picked up that phone, you're like, what's going on, man? That would be tough to shake.
Yeah.
That would be tough.
And it's not a good place to be. Like, you're distrusting somebody. That's not an open-hearted relationship.
No, not at all. Can we talk a little bit about the support that men need going through divorce? And I'll share with you why I want to talk about this just quickly here. Is one of the things that I noticed about myself as I was going through my own divorce is I've heard somebody say, one of our past podcast guests used the term John Wayne syndrome. And I think a lot of men have it. And I had it going through my own divorce, especially early on, where I was like, listen, like, I have my attorney, I'm the financial guy. What else is there? I'm going to be able to make my way through this. No big deal. And then I realized, what I ultimately did was I pushed people away, right? Like, I pushed some family members away, and it was kind of like, you know what? I've got this. I got it handled. You don't need to worry about it. And ultimately that was the wrong move. So can you talk a little bit more about, like, because I'm an advocate for getting help and reaching out to, like, creating team you is the term I use all the time. Like, you have your attorneys, you have your financial people, you have your coaches, you have your therapist, whoever you need, your religious support system, whatever it is, to surround yourselves, because you're going to need all those people at some point to get through this, especially if it's a challenging divorce like ours was. So can you talk a little bit about that? Because I'm venturing to guess that you meet with a lot of men that are maybe like finally just reaching out, and they should have done it a long time ago, right? Like, it's okay to reach out for help. And I want you to share about, like, your perspective on this.
I think you're right. It's John Wayne syndrome. And I think we see it as, men specifically see it as a weakness to ask for help. And if you don't know how to fix a car, you're not going to try to do it on your own. You're going to go to a mechanic. So I understand it. It seems like divorce is just the act of going through the court system, but it's not. Mm-hmm. It's something much, much bigger. How did you get to the place where you're going through the divorce? So what I'm trying to show here is you need to scale your help in a way such that you're looking at more things than just the divorce. The divorce didn't start the day you left. It's probably been there since childhood. I know mine was. Like, the patterns I had been around since childhood. So it's much, much bigger than you think it is. There's no shame in asking for help. Mm-hmm. The purpose of a coach is to point out your blind spots. A coach will guide you, and I'm sure that's what you do in your financial advisory, is pointing out where those blind spots are. Like, you're overspending in terms of going to restaurants. They might not even see that, right? So where I'm coaching is coming from that emotional side. A divorce is a very emotional battle. And emotions come from yourself, not from the other person. So it's a coach is a mirror, and the coach points out where those things are that you don't see. So yes, number one, it's bigger than you think. Number two, you need that mirror so that you can see yourself fully. And then I would say having some sort of brotherhood, that word gets overused, but some group of friends that you can go out with, maybe have a few beers, although not too many, but have that camaraderie. And that group should call you out on your own shit, where you're maybe not being the best version of yourself that you are. Don't just think of the divorce as this big. I think that's the mistake most men make. And if it's this big, yeah, I can handle that. But it's much, much bigger than that. It's been going on since childhood, probably.
You gotta get to that root cause, right? And figure out what the root cause is of it getting to where it is now.
If you don't get to that root cause, you're likely going to repeat the same pattern. Mm-hmm. So if 50% of first marriages fail, 60% of second marriages fail, and 70% of third marriages fail. So that tells me, that indicates that people aren't doing that root cause work.
No. That's like a whole other show. We could go do a deep dive on root cause coaching, because something I used to do with financial advisors at a company I used to work with is coaching people and coaching advisors and understanding, root cause of why they do things the way they do and so on. So it's pretty cool, man. I would say that let's call this the carte blanche segment of our call here today, our chat here today. Is there anything that you want to share with our listeners that we didn't talk about, or maybe any questions I should have asked that I didn't ask that you want to make sure you get the message out?
As you're going through your divorce, I faced a lot of fear, and I masked that with anger. What I would encourage you to do is learn to sit with that fear and look at what's underneath that. So I had a lot of fear around not having enough money and being controlled. So where did that come from? And Jamie, if you don't mind me mentioning, on your website, I saw that you came from a divorce. Your parents went through that, and there was some financial struggles through that. Yeah. And so because of that, you became a financial advisor. Is that right?
That's proper. Yeah.
What I've learned is we go from void, meaning what you're lacking, into value, and you turn that into a value. So that's the journey I see in you, is you went from your family struggling with money to a place where you are advising people how to keep their money. So if you look at those emotions and underneath them and learn to I come from a tech background, so I think of it as debugging. So if you learn to debug those emotions, you can almost track that void to value. So yeah, there's fear, but what's underneath that fear and why is it there? What are you really scared of? And how can you turn that fear into a strength?
That's tough to do. That is tough to do, though, because not everybody has that opportunity, right? Or sees that vision when you're in the throes of it. I had no idea I was going to be a financial planner when I was 7 or 8, right? My brain hadn't even fully developed at that point, right? But you've said, a couple times on the show, is you've kind of carry all of these experiences with you, and they become part of you and your DNA. And then, I was just one of the lucky people, and it sounds like you were as well, as with the coaching work that you're doing, where you're able to take this moment, because it is really, even though it went for very long, it is a moment of time in your life that you're able to take and extrapolate all that information and those experiences and be able to help other people that are going through it, because you've lived and breathed it. And not everybody has the luxury of being able to do that, the opportunity to be able to do that, or the foresight to be able to do that. It's pretty amazing that you do what you do, coming from where you came from and the experience that you have, man. You should be super proud of yourself.
But I wouldn't call that luck. It's determination, and anybody can have that. So number one, figure out why you want to do what you want to do. Why are you going to dig yourself out of your hole? Mine was my kids. Mm-hmm. So that was the starting point. I don't think it's luck. I think it's making the decision that this is not going to be the thing that beats you.
Yeah. It can be a moment that you experience. It doesn't have to define you, right? That's really what it's all about, man. So I appreciate it, man. It was a great chat with you today. Great experience that you have, and I'm super thankful that you decided to share your time with us today, because it's pretty important, the work that you're doing. So thanks again, man, for sharing your compelling story and the valuable work that you're doing with Divorce Daddy. For our listeners who want to learn more about Jeff's initiatives or participate in any of his workshops, visit his website. We're going to put all the links in the show notes. Make sure you get access to all of his social platforms and everything. And remember, if you're going through a divorce and looking for financial support, Allegiant Divorce Solutions is here to help. You can visit us at allegiantds.com for more resources and expert guidance. And don't forget to subscribe to this podcast for more inspiring stories just like Jeff's and more practical advice. Until next time.